Before social media, your profile wasn't online. It was what you wore to school. Your shoes, your jeans, your jacket, even your watch could tell everyone exactly who you were before you even said a word. Now, in this episode, we're not going to be talking about expensive brands, although we're going to name off some. But this episode is more about belonging. It's more about how you felt wanting that piece of clothing that maybe you never got. It was about how you coveted certain brands because you thought that they were going to put you in a different crowd because you didn't want to be in the one you were at. But that's okay. We were all self conscious little kids growing up, learning how to find our own way. And for whatever reason, TV had us certain that the only way to get along in life was to buy the best. But that's not always true. And maybe when mom and dad said, Kmart's just fine, maybe they were right. But everybody wanted to fit in somewhere. And sometimes that meant changing clothes. Sometimes it meant refusing to. Hey everyone, I'm Chris, and welcome back to Average Joe Let's Talk About It. The podcast where we take a break from today's chaos to remember the moments, the music, the movies, the people, and the experiences that shaped Generation X. If today's episode brings back a memory, I'd love for you to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more Gen Xers find these conversations and keeps our community growing. So your clothes were your identity. How you wore them was even more important, because as we go through this episode, we're going to talk about the different brands that there were available during the times where we were in school and we were very impressionable young people thinking that we needed a certain brand to stand out amongst everyone else. But we weren't peacocks. Some of us didn't give a shit. I know I didn't, but I didn't have a whole lot of choice. A lot of things that I would have liked to have growing up, we just didn't have the money for. And a lot of people out there, maybe you, were in the same position. So sometimes Levi's and Wranglers, they were going to do the job. Wearing LA gear instead of Nike, that was fine too. You didn't have to be dolled up in Guess or Z Cavaricci. What was important was that you actually were wearing clothes to school. And having been in the military and seen third world countries, I can tell you right now that all the things, all the material things that we coveted and all the things that we may still covet to this day that we wish we had that we don't have, it's really inconsequential to the bigger picture. But when you're a kid and you're growing up, and whether you're in elementary school, going through your tween era in 7th and 8th grade, or coming into your own in high school, first impressions were everything. And I don't know about you, but I had an experience of moving in between junior high and high school. So, I mean, do the math, right? If anybody out there has been in a similar situation, moving schools in general is usually a daunting task for a kid growing up, trying to find their place in the world, right? Trying to fit in, but making it harder by transitioning them during one of the most tumultuous times where those types of things matter, right? So if you're in junior high and you spent those years, probably some of you split off, went to other junior highs, but maybe you have your core friend group that followed you to the junior high that you were assigned to. Those people may or may not be going to high school with you as well. But if you move away from the district, then all that goes out the window. And that was me. And so I can tell you right now that it was tough not knowing anybody going into my freshman year of high school. And for somebody who needed a little bump with their identity, was really hoping to come across some of these brands and hopefully find ways to fit into this new school I was going to. But it's all about money, and shopping at Mervyn's versus Kmart really depend on the size of your pocketbook. So I understand what it's like to be a parent. I understand what it's like to be a parent of many children. and to be able to keep up with the Joneses. It's just a part of life. I think it's human nature. It's in our DNA. But we know in our heart of hearts and our mind of minds that it's really not that important, which is why today I could throw on a pair of Walmart jeans and be fine with it. But a lot of us had an opportunity to save money for the clothes that we wanted. If our parents weren't going to buy them for us, maybe grandma and grandpa would. Maybe we're going to go mow some lawns. Maybe we're going to do some chores. We're going to get some extra money because we're raising some money for them first run Air Jordans that are coming out. One of those memorable things, and they were highly sought after. So, and obviously, Jordans, Air Jordans, and the air about them has never gone away. But you did. You had to save money for something outside of what your parents would normally buy for you. Otherwise, you hear, there's nothing wrong with Kmart. Meanwhile, everybody wanted the same name brand stuff. So we could break it down like this. You have the popular kids. Now, I don't know what anybody's definition of a popular kid is, but I know what mine is. And I can tell you that they were wearing things like Guess jeans, which the advertisements were out of this world. I mean, if you think about some of the models that you remember seeing during those commercials, I mean, who is not going to want to go out and buy some of their clothing, right? But here's some old throwback names that I don't think that we've thought about for a while, like Esprit. And Swatch is making a comeback. But how many people wore more than one? And I mean, when they first came out, they come out with like the jelly wristbands, and you could see the actual internal movements if you got one of the ones that I think they called it the jellyfish. I don't know, but I just know that was the Swatch that I had. And then they come out with those stupid rubber band looking things that I think that's how you protected the bezel, which is insane to me because those things would just snap. What a sham. Members only jackets began in the 70s, but I think they blew up in the 80s. I thought you could still find it at your local Tanger outlet. I mean, it's out there. Lacoste, a lot of people don't know that, hey, little alligator, right? I think there was a knockoff. Who remembers? And it's not even in my list. La Tigre, right? So, okay. So here's some of the things that I remember as well. Ocean Pacific. OP was kind of like that, and Hobie to me during that era, right? If you were into surfing, or if you just like the surf brand culture, OP and Hobie were probably at the bottom during that time. They weren't. I think they were. So let me put it this way: OP was huge, sponsoring surfer events, Southern California, huge Huntington Beach, the whole surfer culture, right? And then we're gonna talk about some of them brands later on. So let's put a pin in that. We'll move on to the next couple. So Varnet. Am I even saying it right? I've probably said half of these wrong my entire life, but I don't give a shit. Polo, Ralph Lauren, still around. That's a mainstay out there. I think I'm way beyond that. But I did go through a phase when I was in my late teens, early 20s where Polo was everything. And Eddie Bauer, I think, was the other one too, right? And so we swapped that out for Buckle, which didn't exist when we were out there shopping. But here's the thing about the Swatches, right? They released hundreds of the collectible watches, and they made owning multiple watches fashionable. So I never did that. Once again, people who can just throw money away are going and, creating these fashion icons or these fashion trends to where, hey, let's put like 4 Swatches on my arm. It's ridiculous, but you know it. I know it. We've seen it. Thank God it's over. But while you're bullshitting, one last thing about a Swatch watch, if they're still out there, I'm a watch guy. I'm a sunglass guy. And sometimes I'm a hat guy. So I'm going to go get myself one. Bank on it. I'll show it to you on one of my episodes when I get it. I just need to figure out which one I want. So layered polos, we're talking about polo shirts and Ralph Lauren and all that kind of stuff. But the layered polos and the pop collars, thank you, Top Gun. That's the shittiest trend I ever seen in my life. I know that I've also seen the layered polos somewhere else. I just don't remember what it was. But I'm pretty sure that whoever it was in the movie that I saw them wearing it in was a complete douchebag character, because that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I see shit like that. So we break it down into groups. We all had tribes, right? We ran with certain people. So there was different classes of people growing up. And I don't think they're really I don't really think the kids really bought into that, but I think it translated from a class of person to a culture, right? So if we were going to break down what people were wearing and why they were wearing it, we could break them down in the tribes that we joined, the cultures that we followed, and the things that were most important to us. And I think a lot of us Gen Xers, probably, you can't even put us into a specific category. I think we were a potpourri of a lot of things. I think not only if we did gravitate towards one group of people, I think at the end of the day, we would come together as a diverse group of all different individuals from all those places. And one of those being skaters. So I had my skateboard, my skater era, or my experience, and I think it was right about 7th grade, I believe. The summer before 7th grade, I think I was getting into skateboarding. It might have even been before that. I think I had a cheap board, but the clothing is what we're going to talk about. So Vision Streetwear, definitely had myself a pair of Vision Streetwear shoes. They were the red and black ones, if you remember. I think it was black on the inside, red on the outside of one shoe, and black on the outside and red on the inside of the other shoe. Were super cool shoes. Nice badge on there, said Vision Streetwear, and then you got your little ollie protection for the side of your shoe, because guys were ripping holes in the side of their shoes from ollieing so much. Yeah, and to be honest with you, before that, I had just a regular pair of tennis shoes, and I had an old pair of tennis shoes, and I cut one pair of tennis shoes and cut the area where I could still lace through the old pair of shoes, and I just cut out a little piece to go over the side of my shoe like an ollie protector. Hey man, sometimes you've got to MacGyver that shit. Pal Peralta, uh, Santa Cruz, definitely had some Santa Cruz t-shirts. Vans, I've been wearing Vans since I was just a wee little man, and it's because I have a wide foot. And Vans, even before Airwalks and even before Etnies and DC shoes, were the popular shoe to wear. But yes, Airwalks, Vision shoes, independent, and these are just all skateboard companies. So you're buying, t-shirts with all these logos on it. You're basically advertising for them, is what you're doing, because a lot of the designs were just logos. They weren't great designs. Like, we're going to be talking about these surfer culture clothing, and if you remember, and we're going to get to it, they had some of the best designs out there. But not that wallet chains were a trend that just started just because skateboarders wore them. No, they've been around for a long time. Even the metalheads would wear them. It was just convenient and it was cool, and you had a chain, and some idiots like to turn it into a weapon. But in any case, wallet chains were in. Board shorts, I mean, you would get to a point where you call them jorts because you didn't know if they were jeans or if they were shorts, because they go all the way down below your knees. I hope I'm blocking it out, but I don't remember ever wearing some dumb shit like that. But hey, man, more power to you if you did. But if you look back on it now and you think back, you're like, why? Why'd we do that? Because it was fun, because it was in, right? Stay connected. So, yes, surfer kids and the beach kids, because I did spend a lot of time growing up in Southern California, it was a huge deal. So, I did go through my surfer stage. OP, of course, they were huge. Big surf competition sponsoring going on. The same with Quicksilver. But who remembers Gotcha? Like, I haven't seen Gotcha in forever. There's, Quicksilver still out there. Billabong's still out there. Body Glove I haven't seen in a while, although I know they still exist. But Hobie, you see that from time to time. But how about these two throwbacks? TNC, Town and Country, right? And Maui and Sons and Thrilla Gorilla and all of those characters, right? I'm surprised they didn't make a cartoon out of it. And maybe they did. I don't know. I don't remember it. But I do know that all of those names that I mentioned for the surfer culture brands definitely But well, I don't know, man. I think skateboarding brand culture apparel got better as time went on, but I don't remember a time where the designs on a surfboard shirt or any of that ever faltered, right? I do know that there was one shirt that my stepdad had that I loved that I thought was funny, had a little you know, like the Big Johnson t-shirts when we were a little bit older that came out. It was like a play on words, but like Mr. Zog's Sex Wax, I remember was a shirt that I'd always steal from him that would said, put a little wax on your stick. I think it's like Sex Wax, right? Mr. Zog Sex Wax. And then what was the other one? Beaver wax. Rub a little beaver on your lips. That might have been a chapstick thing. All I know is some of the coolest shit I thought back then was on surfer attire. So fight me in the comments if you like. I believe I'm right. Now, everybody goes through this phase. I think it's a phase that you go in and out of. I wasn't always one to go to a concert and go buy a t-shirt that was dated. If I was going to go buy a shirt, to signify what bands that I truly loved, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a shirt that, is going to be an album cover. Something like that, right? I can go and tell people I went to a concert and show them my shirt all day long. But when it says like 2000, or I'm sorry, I mean, back, when it says like 1983 or 1984 on it, you're like, come on, don't date yourself. But in any case, right? So the Metalheads and the Rockers had the band t-shirts, wore the denim jackets until they wore those things out. Leather jackets. I didn't see a whole lot of that growing up. I lived in Arizona, and ain't nobody out there dressed head to toe like a Hessian. We called them Hessians at the time. I don't even know. I think Hessian is a word for like a German rocker. I'm gonna have to look that up, but I do remember that a lot of what do we call them anyway? There was headbangers, metalheads, all these things that I still am to this day. But I didn't buy into all of that stuff, right? I might have had a band shirt. Definitely am wearing, jeans. Converse, I don't think I wore Converse until I was an adult. Acid wash jeans, of course. Studded belts, nope, didn't get into that. I didn't have the hair to have long hair. But like bands like Metallica, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, even Twisted Sister, some one-hit wonder metal bands out there. If you think about like Beavis and Butthead, Winger, and AC/DC. I used to wear my stepdad's Def Leppard Pyromania shirt back in the day. I was a huge Def Leppard fan. Still am. Anyway, moving on. And then you got the preps, wearing the polos, the Azods, the Lacoste, Dockers. I think Dockers were like the poor man's khaki. But Bass was huge. And I remember it was out for a long time. I think they even made a knockoff Birkenstock. I mean, but everybody thought Bass was the shit. And now I'm just like, why? But the members only jacket debuted in 1975 and it didn't explode in popularity until the 80s. So I don't know, slow burner. I can't figure out. I bet you somebody somewhere famous was wearing one and that's how it took off. That's just how it goes. And then you get into the jocks, right? The athletes wearing Nike, Adidas, Converse. They're basically a walking billboard for going to the gym and playing organized sports, right? I didn't do a whole lot of that. I might have if I had the opportunity, but I didn't, and that's for other reasons. Anyway, but yeah, Reebok, LA Gear. LA Gear was huge. I had a pair of LA Gear high tops. I mean, I wasn't proud of them at the time, but once again, I fall back to that old thing about how my mentality as a young kid growing up made some of the dumbest shit more important than what really was important. Russell Athletics was huge back then. And then let's talk about the starter jackets. Who had a starter jacket? I didn't, but I think some of the best starter jackets were the NFL style starter jackets and the NBA ones. Like, no joke, windbreakers, those things were the coolest. They were waterproof. Never owned one myself, but I have worn many of my friends' different styles and different teams, and I can honestly say they were some pretty badass jackets. And I couldn't understand why people were paying over $100 for them. I get it. And so then you have the hip hop culture. Adidas Superstars made famous by Run DMC, no laces or maybe the fat laces. I know I definitely had some Pumas. Kangol was big. New Jack City. Come on, man. Kangol, Samuel L. Jackson, right? Brought it back, made it big. I'm pretty sure there's a ton of other people that brought it back even after the New Jack City phase. Gold chains, big old thick ass gold chains. The bucket hats like LL Cool J. That guy, trendsetters, right? Early 80s, mid 80s rap was some of the best rap that we had out there. And then you had shit like Cross Colors. Man, I vaguely remember that and I'm vaguely going to talk about it. And then Fila. Fila was huge. And then of course, what about them shit kickers, right? So and not hillbillies, not necessarily rednecks. I lived out west and we didn't have rednecks because I think that's more of a southern thing, and definitely didn't have hillbillies. We called them shit kickers, and definitely wearing Wranglers, wearing Lees, wearing Levi's, Justin boots, Tony Lama, which I don't even know if it's still around. Roper was huge. Roper boots was huge, and of course the giant rodeo belt buckles that we referred to them as a tombstone for a dead dick. And I think the reason why we gravitated towards that title was because they wear them damn jeans so fucking tight. They can't even get air down there. And then they got this giant belt buckle. So we just said, hey, man, it's a tombstone for a dead dick, right? Wear some looser jeans, bro. We don't want to see that. And then, of course, if you think about the things that everybody wanted, because like I said, we all coveted something. There was always a friend that had something that we wanted, or it was somebody that we wanted to be, because that's how pitifully materialistic and what's the word I'm looking for? The whole beauty's only skin deep, but ugly's to the bone thing. Anyway, I can't think of the trait right now, but being influenced by others because you want to be them is what I'm getting at. And so, like for instance, this little fun fact about starter jackets, right? Early 1990s, they became such a status symbol that some schools actually banned them because of theft and fights. And so, not only that, but I lived in not the greatest part of Southern California, so a lot of gang activity, and some starter jackets were more gang affiliated than others. So that was probably the fight side of that. But I mean, things like Air Jordans that people still go out of their way and line up for a $200-300 pair of shoes, which is insane to me. When you've got gimmicks like Reebok Pumps, though, when those come out, you know, it was cool. I thought it was cool. I mean, you plug some shit in there and you just squeeze a little basketball on the tongue of your high tops. I mean, who's thinking of these things? But pretty cool nonetheless. And then let's go even farther back to a one off is the hypercolor shirts, right? Those things change color depending on the heat, your body heat. You do quick dying trend, of course, but you don't want to leave something like that out when you're talking about when we grew up. Z Cavarici, Merite Francois Jabot, I think is the name of the brand of jeans, right? I think these were those baggy jeans. Might as well have been bell bottoms. I don't know. Not as bad as the Jenko jeans later on, but crazy, right? And then Bugle Boy. Hey, that was me. I was poor. I was wearing Bugle Boy and some LA gear kicks, and I thought I was super special. And then let's not forget about like sunglasses. Talking about the biggest things are like Maui Jims, Panama Jacks, Oakley, of course. Everybody wanted Oakley razors. You get the mini razors, you get the big razors, and they were huge. They were huge back then. You look now and you're like, they're out of control. But they still sell those things. And so I remember I had a pair and I thought I was the shit. And I'm not even sure how I come across them. I'm pretty sure that my parents didn't buy them for me. But I do remember that the cool thing about those is you can change out the earpieces, you can change out the lenses. I mean, you can mix and match on the frame. People were doing it. They look like Swatch wristbands after a while. Anyway, moving on. So I alluded to the whole Air Jordan red, black NBA fine thing. So I'm going to read it word for word just so we know that I'm not leaving anything out. So when Nike launched Air Jordans in 1985, the NBA fined Michael Jordan for wearing the original black and red colorway because it violated the league's uniform policy, because the shoes were supposed to be like 90% white. I think I learned that in some documentaries and watching the movie Air. But in any case, Nike ended up paying the fines, also in the movie Air. But I knew that long before that. But it turned the controversy into one of the most successful marketing campaigns ever, which goes to show when you're fighting the power and you're getting in trouble, you're usually getting pretty popular. But I think as childhood peacocks, I would call them, I think they just put themselves on a stage, right? Everybody wants to outdo somebody else, especially in school. You know, the competition was fierce, and the older you got, the pettier it got, and the more, God, I still can't remember, shallow. Like, I was like, what's the name of that movie? Shallow Hal. Right. So shallow is where I go when I think about how much work we put into wearing the right clothes and saying the right things and following the right, it's trends are cool. Being a trendsetter is cool, but it don't make you a great person. And so when I think about, when we had talent shows or people were putting on fashion shows, because that type of shit happened. These things were going on. I don't know if they're still going on, but in any case, moments like that, they take place. And, these people run around putting themselves on display. And what I remember the most is when I said earlier about how you are compiling different groups together into one person, I think the true Gen Xers are those people. I think the true Gen Xers are the ones who would take a little bit of each of those things that I mentioned previously and put them together in one ensemble. And here is a good example of that. Me and my friend group, we would wear Guess jeans, Doc Martens. I think we had flannels. You remember it's, early 90s, grunge, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all that shit. Anyway, but I mean, if you think about it, hell, I think I had a bald head. I think some of my friends had mohawks. We were all over the map, and we listened to metal. We listened to Pantera. We listened to, all those things that were considered hardcore back then, right? Sepultura and Slayer. But at the same time, we're moonwalking and, Billie Jean, that's not my son. But in any case, right, we're a hodgepodge of a lot of different styles and a lot of different cultures all rolled up into one. So I think the real ones are the ones that you can't fit into a category. The real ones are the ones that you could go into their closet and see a little bit of everything. And the real ones mostly are the ones that didn't give a shit about what they wore to keep up with somebody else. But it wouldn't be our lives if we didn't have things like hammer pants, windbreakers, and scrunchies, friendship bracelets. And yes, I did say the hammer pants, the MC hammer pants, different than parachute pants. You remember now. I do remember some kids showed up not long after the Thriller album came out, where they had like the full red getup, like with all the zippers and everything. Where you buy this stuff? All right. Well, let's close it up. Looking back, it's funny how much power we gave to a pair of shoes or a jacket or a style in general. We thought those brands defined us, and really they just help us find our people, even if that meant it was one person from every category or a couple people. It didn't even matter. At some point, the brands you were wearing stopped making a difference in how you looked at yourself. It was who you surrounded yourself with. That's what mattered. The people, your friends, they're what mattered. And they're what made the most impact on you. And one day, you're going to look back and you're going to say, thank you. But whether you wore Vans or Nikes, Wranglers, Guess, or your favorite band's t-shirt, we all walked the same school hallways. We all worried about fitting in. And years later, None of us remember what somebody paid for their shoes, but we all remember the people who were wearing them. So that being said, what was the one clothing brand you begged your parents to buy? And did you ever get it? And what did your wardrobe say about you in high school? And did it even matter? Did it matter? Leave a shout out in the comments, let me know. But until next time, stay safe, love well, be passionate about everything you do, and we'll see you next time. Before you go, I'd love to hear your story. Every episode may start with a memory, but it doesn't end until you share yours. So leave a comment below and join the conversation. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with another Gen Xer who will appreciate a trip down memory lane. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, because the memories may belong to the past, but the stories are still worth telling. I'm Chris. This is Average Joe. Let's talk about it, and we'll see you next time.